Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners, to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. Hope everybody had a fun, happy, and safe 4th of July weekend, doing whatever it is you are doing to celebrate America's birthday. We are back in the saddle, getting after it as we inch closer and closer to Buccaneers training camp, which will be going down by the end of this month of July. So very excited. And in the meantime, we're going to talk about this upcoming season, talk about the best case and the worst case scenarios for the Bucs this season. The Bucs will win if ... or the Bucs will lose if ... We got a number of situations and scenarios to break down, so it should be a fun one to get back into the swing of things. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is the face that runs the place at pewterreport.com, SR Scott Reynolds. Scott, good to see you. How was your 4th of July?
It was great, Matt. How about you?
Very fun. Enjoyed it. But happy to be back with all the Pewter people. We will have roll call today as well coming up.
There we go. Yeah, looking forward to that. So today's topic is an interesting one because it talks about the best case scenario, which Buccaneer fans want to hear about. Breathlessly, I'm sure they're waiting to hear what we're going to say about the best case scenario for the Buccaneers. The worst case scenario, though, well, nobody likes bad news, Matt, but sometimes we have to be the bearers of bad news. The Buccaneers have yet to have an undefeated season. They have yet to win the Super Bowl every year. So
correct.
there is a little bit of disappointment that comes with football season. Sometimes it's in a weekly basis. Sometimes it happens just once or twice a month. Sometimes, it doesn't go very well. I've been a part of too many of those Bucs seasons. The 2-14 season that Lovie Smith presided over back in 2014 comes to mind. Having said that, though, there are the best case scenario and the worst case scenarios that we need to go over. So, Matt, should we deliver the worst case scenario first and get that out of the way, or should we examine the best case scenario? How do you want to play this?
I think we should go best case scenario. We're coming off of the 4th of July weekend. Right. I'm sure people aren't happy to be back at work for regular 9 to 5s. And
hit them with some good news.
So hit them with some good news, obviously. Yeah. So, and when it comes to the negative stuff, like obviously a season-ending injury to like certain key players, obviously is like a worst case scenario. Yeah. So we won't try to just be like, this guy gets injured, this guy gets injured. And things like that. We'll try to get a little more specific to it. By the way, a very happy birthday to Richard Taroka.
Yes.
Who says, it's my birthday today. Can I get a shout out? Love the pod. Absolutely, Richard. You're always in the comments.
You got it. Happy birthday.
We appreciate you. So very happy birthday to you. Hope you are enjoying a great day. But all right, Scott, what is the ultimate best case scenario for the Buccaneers this season? Realistically.
Well, realistically, if everything goes well, the Buccaneers, they could win the Super Bowl. I think there's enough talent on this team that they are a legitimate dark horse contender for the Super Bowl, which means a couple things. The team has to stay incredibly healthy, right? That has to be the common denominator. If you go back to the two lone Super Bowl appearances, 2002 and 2020, the one common denominator that both teams really had, aside from Hall of Fame players and a talented roster, was staying healthy. The only starter from that 2002 Buccaneer team that was an injured reserve was Booger McFarland, the nose tackle. And Buck Gurley and Chartrick Darby filled in admirably. Warren Sapp called it the Buck and Chuck show at nose tackle. And the Bucs didn't miss a beat. They won the Super Bowl led by their defense. Then in 2020, again, Matt, the player that got injured was on injured reserve, and it didn't happen really till later in the season in the playoffs. The first round really was Alex Kappa, the right guard. Otherwise, the starters were pretty much intact for most of that season, and so they didn't really have that devastating injury like they had 2 years later with Ryan Jensen, the center having a season-ending or career-ending injury, really. So to me, I think it has to start there. Then I think the Buccaneers, you have to have a lot of players level up, right? You've got like the second-year guys. We talked about it before the summer. Kalijah Kancey, Yaya Diaby, they've got to be the real deal, right? They have to level up. The Bucs running game has to get going. But if this team hits on all cylinders this year and maybe takes advantage of some good fortune, the ball bounces the right way against teams like the 49ers and the Lions, if the Buccaneers somehow end up with home field advantage in the playoffs. I just did a Pewter Pulse that will debut on Wednesday about the Bucs projected win total. But one of the key distinctions I make about this Buccaneer team, and not really a distinction, I guess it's more like a this Buccaneer team reminds me of the Lions last year, where the year before they were 9-8 and they missed the playoffs, and then they leveled up and they went 12-5. They won the division. They went all the way to the NFC Championship game. They beat good teams like Tampa Bay twice in that season. And I think that when you look at this past year, Matt, what were the Buccaneers? 9-8, but because of their division, they made the playoffs, right? So this could be the year the Buccaneers take a big step. There are 11 teams out of the 17 on the schedule that did not make the playoffs last year, or I should say opponents that comprise those games, because the Panthers are on there twice, the Falcons and Saints also. So to me, I think it's injuries. If they don't have a lot of injuries, if they get some good fortune in terms of the way the ball bounces, I think the Buccaneers Super Bowl window opens legitimately in 2025. But I'm not ruling out if everything just goes their way, the Buccaneers, they could wind up in the Super Bowl this year. Not saying it's going to happen, but so you're telling me there's a chance. Yeah, there is
exactly. Shout out to Dumb and Dumber, a great movie. So there's two things that you just said that to me really resonate that I agree with, and I'm going to kind of expand upon. The first thing was saying that the Bucs are a dark horse, which I fully agree with, because right now, if you look at the landscape of the NFL, but we'll say specifically to the NFC, because that's where the Bucs play and they have to get through to get to the Super Bowl, there's no doubt about it. There's no question. It's the 49ers and the Lions is probably the top two favorites to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. There can be an argument made for one of the NFC East teams as well, whether it's the Eagles, who are looking to revamp after kind of a disappointing season last year. And, the Cowboys, for as crazy and chaotic as they are a pretty formidable foe as well.
Yeah.
But if you were going to ask certain analysts and national pundits and people like that, who's your dark horse team? Who's your surprise team? I really do think the Buccaneers would be one of those groups, especially in the NFC. I mean, it feels really divided right now. I see comments, I see articles, different, videos saying the Bucs are going to be super disappointing this year, and then I also see the Bucs are the team that nobody is talking about that are really going to turn heads this season in a positive way. So it's so divisive about the Buccaneers right now, which makes them a great dark horse candidate. It's not going to be the top pick. It's not going to be the one that's going to be a guarantee. But if things fall the right way, it could work. Because in my opinion right now, if someone were to ask me, like, what's your expectation? What do you think the potential is for the Buccaneers this season? I honestly would say I think an NFC championship game appearance probably, in my opinion, is like the best that the Bucs will reach this season. But to the second part, the thing that I like that what you said is you need the ball to bounce the right way certain times, where if the Bucs get a favorable matchup in that NFC championship game, they could be going to the Super Bowl. And it reminds me kind of not when Ryan Jensen got hurt, but the 2021 season, the year before, when the Bucs had the best team. But then Tristan Wirfs got injured and Antonio Brown obviously said peace out.
Chris Godwin also.
Chris Godwin as well. When you look at that team and the situation that was in front of them, if they were to beat the Rams, they would have hosted the NFC Championship game in Tampa. They would have played the 49ers, I believe. And that wasn't, remember, they didn't have Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, they were still a really good team, but it was a different 49ers team. Then the Bucs, if they take care of business at home, then they're playing in the Super Bowl against the Bengals. And in my opinion, and this is, I guess, all hypothetical, I think they smoked the Bengals. I mean, they smoked the Chiefs
Yeah,
the year
right.
before, but I think they would have had a way easier matchup against the Bengals in that Super Bowl than what they had against the Kansas City Chiefs. And
I
they won
agree.
that game 31-9. So it's all about, man, if Tristan Wirfs is healthy, or, if Todd Bowles doesn't blitz at the end of that game against the Rams, if
Yeah.
there's so many little things where it didn't help the Bucs in that situation. But again, last season, going 9-8, still getting a pretty good matchup with the Eagles, who were faltering, and then almost beating the Detroit Lions. I really think those are two things that are possible for the Buccaneers this year, and it could kind of bounce their way. And then the last thing I'll say, I think best case scenario for the Buccaneers is that they find a true unsung hero in
Yeah.
the postseason. And my example for that, again, going back to the 2020 season, Sean Murphy Bunting just getting an interception in every single game,
That's
playoff
right.
game, except for the Super Bowl. In the playoffs, you need weird, crazy things to happen. The Scotty Miller touchdown against the Green Bay Packers, I think, is another example.
Yeah.
Who will it be this time around? Is it
Mhm.
Jalen McMillan proving he's a top guy in this wide receiver room after Mike and Chris and can contribute just as much? Is it Joe Tryon-Shoyinka all of a sudden figuring it out in the postseason and having
Yeah.
a crazy 3-sack game with a forced fumble or two? Who's going to be that unsung hero? Every team needs it in a playoff run. And I don't know. Maybe those two are candidates, but certainly they come to mind.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too, Matt, is we don't have a crystal ball. I am not 100% on my predictions ever. I don't know anybody
Yeah.
that is.
No one
And,
is.
and if they are, they probably should just reside in Las Vegas and just be really rich and put your money where your mouth is, right? I think that's part of it. But when I looked at Tom Brady coming to Tampa Bay in 2020, and of course all the X factors, right? The COVID season, there was no preseason, right? So Brady didn't have any games to gel with his players, his new teammates, outside of the practices. Tristan Wirfs was a rookie who went in against Cameron Jordan cold. Antoine Winfield Jr. went up against Drew Brees cold without the benefit of any preseason games. And yet the Buccaneers ended up winning the Super Bowl. And I think, too, what I said about that season was I didn't think the Buccaneers were going to win the Super Bowl in Tom Brady's first year. I thought that would be a ramp up to the Super Bowl in 2021. I really felt the Buccaneers were going to win the Super Bowl in 2021 when Brady arrived in 2020. Now, we talked about the Bucs being completely healthy that 2020 season. They also, I think, did the better job of others in handling the COVID situation with all the testing and whatnot.
Right.
But the other thing, too, is they caught fire at the end of the season. They went on a run.
Did.
They got hot. And remember, that's kind of what propelled the Buccaneers against the Eagles. They had won 5 of their last 6 games, while the Eagles had jumped out, to 11 wins earlier in the season. I think they were at 10 wins, and then they really went down the chute in terms of a slide. And same with Jacksonville. Jacksonville started off very hot. So the Buccaneers caught both the Jaguars on Christmas Eve and the Eagles in the first round of the playoffs at the right time. They were ascending, and the Jaguars and the Eagles were descending. And I think that matters as well. It's sometimes not how you start, it's how you finish, right? And so the teams that have some momentum can build upon that, and it can help kind of create a bit of a steamroller effect into the postseason. And I think that's going to be the case too with the Bucs running game, Matt. Is it might start off a little slow because you got some new offensive linemen, you got a rookie center, right? And Rashad White, it took him a while to get going in Dave Canales' system. It might take him a little while to get going in Liam Cohen's system. But I think that the running game too, you're going to see a little bit of a mirroring effect as what we saw last year, where it's not going to be great at the start of the season. It's going to be much better at the end of the season once all these pieces kind of come together. And I think too, the X factor could be Bucky Irving really helping out with Rashad White, creating a 1-2 punch in the backfield. So all of the pressure, all of the carries, all of the workload is not on Rashad White's shoulders. But I think that is a situation too. So when we're talking about what's the best case scenario for the Bucs run game, to kind of parse that part out, I think the Buccaneers can end up with a middle of the pack running game. And I think that's all this team really needs. It's still going to be a pass first offense with Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin for sure, as it should be. But having the running game, instead of ranked 32nd or 31st in the league, if it can get up around 18, just north of 20, I think that does wonders for this Bucs offense.
It's so funny you mentioned all of that, because the first thing I wrote down in terms of best case scenario when talking about certain parts and pieces of this team, and
Yeah.
not just the grand scheme of winning a Super Bowl, I wrote the ground game gets going. I said Rachaad White, 1,000 rushing yards, and Bucky Irving being a good complement to Rachaad White. Now, what does that exactly mean? Is it a 1-2 punch like the Cowboys had with Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard a couple seasons ago? Maybe, but obviously Bucky just kind of filling his role as a backup. And really, when you look at it, since let's just say 2020, when the Bucs have found their winning ways, they've never really had a great running attack. They've had a solid rushing attack. They've had a good one at times. Obviously, Lombardi Lenny, Leonard Fournette in the playoffs really turned it on and became Lombardi Lenny. But yeah, the Bucs were never, top 5 in rushing. There were only a handful of times when they really sliced and diced the opponent through the ground. But yeah, really, if they could just get even like top half of the league would be fantastic. Even if they got to 20th in the league in running the football, I think it would open so many things for Baker Mayfield and the receivers. The problem is it's a more than just a balancing act of Rachaad White and Bucky Irving. That's where the offensive line really plays into this whole thing. And sure, the Bucs are going to have growing pains, but what has worried me in the past with the Bucs offense, even like going back to Brady in his first year with the Bucs and Baker last year as well, is I understand there is a grace period of chemistry and figuring things out and putting it all together. Maybe I'm just a little impatient, but there have been times where I'm like, it's not getting together quick enough. Now, Tom Brady proved me wrong in 2020, coming back from the bye, and the offense was a well-oiled machine and figured itself out. The Bucs offense last year, I think, was a little touch and go. They found a groove, then kind of got shut down. Then they made the adjustments, but the adjustments weren't coming as quickly as possible. I'm not here to slander Dave Canales because overall he was a great asset to the Buccaneers coming to Tampa Bay last year. So I'm not saying that the Bucs are better off without Dave Canales.
Yeah.
I like this new element and this new piece they have now with Liam Cohen, but the run game is going to be a major, major part of whether the Bucs sink or swim this season, or really just make noise. Because at this point, making the playoffs, I don't think is enough for the Buccaneers.
I agree. I think there has to be some steps forward from a 9-8 season and from the first round of the playoffs. I think they need to get into double-digit wins, and I think they also need to advance at least to the divisional round of the playoffs, if not further. Without further ado, people, it is 4:20. I just put in the chat, by the way, a couple of things. I've got a new Pewter Pulse on Todd Bowles. Is he off the hot seat heading into the 2024 season? That's a new Pewter Pulse video here on Pewter Report TV. You can check out. Plus, I also put in the chat what we're talking about right now. What if the Bucs win the Super Bowl? Part of my What If Summer Series. I wrote that over the weekend, so you can check that out. What if they win the Super Bowl? There's some interesting things there that happen, and kind of a chain reaction to this team, especially in the front office and the coaching staff. So make sure you check that out as well. But Matt, it is that time. We do it every Monday at 4:20 without fail. It's something we call
Roll Call. That's right. We want to know, where are you at, Pewter people? As Scott just mentioned, we do this every Monday show right around 4:20. We love our fans. We appreciate what you guys do for us with the show and supporting the show. So we want to interact with everybody as much as we possibly can. So on Mondays, we do Roll Call, where one of us will start talking about a topic about the Buccaneers. And in the meantime, while we're going through that conversation, as you guys have already started, put your location of where you're watching the show from, and we will put it up on the screen, because we got great fans all across the world, not just in the United States, but internationally as well. So we want to give a shout out to everybody that is tuning in live. And for those not watching live, I understand you're not able to every single time. If you want to put in the comments after the show where you're watching from as well, we will make sure we like that too. So I'm going to start this discussion today kind of bouncing off of, or piggybacking off of, something that I spoke about last week, but I want to expand further and kind of take the topic into a little bit of a different direction. So last week's roll call, the news was very, very fresh about Steven Stamkos from the Lightning, leaving the Lightning and signing with the Nashville Predators. And pretty much the emphasis of my roll call and an article that went out on pewterreport.com earlier today is how lucky the Bucs were, because it's so rare in today's sports landscape to have a player stay with one team for their whole career. And the Bucs should be considered lucky that, they had Rondé Barber and Mike Allstott and obviously Derek Brooks, true stars of their teams, stay in Tampa Bay for the whole time. And now it looks like the Bucs have two others coming up with Mike Evans and Levante David. Levante's going into year 13, the greatest inside linebacker after Derek Brooks, of course. Mike Evans has every single Bucs offensive record. But I want to expand upon that because Levante and Mike are towards the latter half of their careers. I mean, they're both into double digits in their NFL tenure. So I want to talk about maybe some other potential future Buck for life candidates, because there are a couple of guys on this team that have been around for a little while, not as long as Levante and Mike, but do have the potential to be future Buccaneers and only play for the Buccaneers for their entire career. So the first two that really come about also were in the same draft class, and that is Tristan Wirfs and Antoine Winfield Jr. Now, with Antoine, he just signed a new contract extension. He's the highest paid defensive back in the league. Not safety, defensive back. Was an all-pro safety last year. He's looking to build on top of what he did. And Tristan Wirfs, as we know, in the middle of a extension discussion right now. If I'm a Bucs fan, I wouldn't really worry too much about it. We've seen the Bucs front office time and time again get the job done with re-signing their guys, taking care of their own guys. But the reason why I think they're going to be Bucs for life, and yes, things can change. Their mentality on the field and off the field are so different. Obviously, they're two of the best at their craft, at their position in the NFL, but they're also two of the nicest, easygoing, lighthearted people that you will talk to in the Bucs locker room off the field. I mean, Tristan Wirfs didn't even really know his contract situation last year when we spoke to him when the season was done. Antoine Winfield Jr. is smiling from ear to ear, no matter what, whether he's snubbed from the Pro Bowl and he answered questions about that, or whether he was winning all pro. Players love to play in Tampa, thanks to Jason Light and the whole Glazer organization and the Bucs organization. They've built a great camaraderie and chemistry on this team, in this town, in the city. And they've been such great players for not even a very long time, really, since 2020. But the trajectory of their career just seems like that they're going to be Bucs for life because they have the attitude and the character to be it. Now, the other two candidates, I'm not exactly sure if they're going to be Bucs for life. I hope that they are. But the next two I'm going to talk about is Vita Vea and Chris Godwin. Now, Vita Vea obviously is putting in a lot of work this offseason. He's slimmed down. But I feel like defensive tackle and wide receiver, when it comes to Godwin, they're two positions where sometimes at the end of it, you kind of run your course with one team, but another team will take a flyer on an aging veteran guy. Hey, he can help out our team in this way or another. I could see that with Vita Vea because obviously he's been in one of the top tiers of, top nose tackles in the league, where when his career starts winding down later on, maybe the Bucs are ready to, maybe not overpay him. And they let him hit free agency the same way that Jason Light had to make that tough decision with Gerald McCoy, and they ended up bringing in Ndamukong Suh. Chris Godwin, a lot's going to tell about him moving to the slot this year, what his production will be like for the Buccaneers. Obviously, they both have the attitude and character, especially Chris Godwin, when it comes to just fitting the mold of being a Buccaneer for their entire career. I hope it works out, but I'm not as confident about Vita and Chris Godwin as I would be about Tristan Wirfs and Antoine Winfield Jr. But hopefully, they all can say they've only played for the Bucs.
That's good stuff, Matt. It really is. A great article by you today. I'm going to go ahead and drop that in the chat as well. You draw an interesting parallel with the Steven Stamkos news because that was a tough,
surprising.
It was surprising. and it was tough news. I'm a Bolts fan myself. If I'm being honest, I'm a Victor Hedman fan more than I am a Stamkos fan. So at least Hetty stays around. He got a contract extension. Can't keep them all. I've seen this happen firsthand, especially after that first Super Bowl team. And it stinks when some of your favorite players end up getting cut or not re-signed. Warren Sapp didn't get cut. He just didn't get re-signed, and they opted to pay Booger McFarland instead. It was a huge mistake by Rich McKay. I kind of understood at the time because Booger was the younger player, but he wasn't nearly as good at any point in his career as Warren Sapp was. And then John Lynch got hurt, and the Bucs, went ahead and gave up on him, and he went ahead and had more Pro Bowls appearances.
And Scott, that's
Denver.
why it makes it so difficult for one player to stay in one spot, because there's so many different variables, right? Like John Lynch was injured, kind of similar to like the Peyton Manning situation when he was with the Colts. A lot of people thought his career was done. So it was like, why would we kind of pay someone like that? But then they figure it out with another team. And thanks to like medical science and all that good stuff, where, Stamkos is a little bit different, where the GM of the Lightning wasn't the one that drafted Steven Stamkos.
Right.
I believe it was Steve Yzerman. That GM may not be as connected to Steven Stamkos as the one that drafted him. And of course, there's also the free agents, maybe like someone like Jordan Whitehead, who goes, hey, I'm getting more money from this other place, so I'm going to jump ship. I don't care about as much of just staying with one team. So there's so many different variables, whether it's from the franchise side of things, like you mentioned with Warren Sapp, or whether it's the player side of things with a good player leaving for free agency. There's so many different things that can kind of take away everything that we're talking about. But it is really, truly special when a player plays his whole career for just one team, because it's so rare today. I mean, Tom Brady didn't even do it. Like right now with Patrick Mahomes, you'd say, I'd be shocked if Patrick Mahomes played for another team besides the Chiefs. But hey, if Joe Montana played for the Chiefs and Joe Namath played for the Rams and Aaron Rodgers is on the Jets now and Brady obviously went from the Patriots to the Bucs, it could really happen to anyone.
Yeah, especially at the quarterback position, because that position just holds so much money, right? And when teams look at the diminishing returns, right? Hey, this guy's getting up there in age. We want to go with the cheaper option, and boy, you can free up a huge chunk of salary cap space. I mean, I can only imagine what quarterbacks are going to be making in the future, right? I mean, if you're looking at over $30-40 million right now, there's soon going to be $50-60 million players, and it's a lot. So good job on that, Matt. Great rant there, and equally great showing from the Pewter people. I just kind of going to throw out some random people here, some random locations. I'm partial to Louisville. That's the proper way to say Louisville. It's Louisville, Kentucky. I'm a big bourbon drinker, so hello, James. Appreciate that. Old school checking in from Clemson, South Carolina. Go Tigers. Here you go. We have a couple of international folks today. Tough from Christchurch, New Zealand is a big one. Sticking back in the States here, we have Jeff Olson. Hello from Kalamazoo. Hello to you, too. And Tyler Lavelle from Williston, North Dakota. So we've got some geography happening here out there in the Badlands area, I think, of North Dakota. Frederick Rapp from Gothenburg, Sweden. Jeff the Champ from New Bern, North Carolina, at work today. We appreciate you joining us at work. Tobias Stark from Munich, Germany. And then we've got a couple of other people from around the world. Michael Sorgel from Svendborg, Denmark. And Derek Pilger from the Philippines, where it's 4:20 a.m. We appreciate the commitment there. And we also love our Florida peeps. Abraham is from Lakeland, Florida, in the Tampa Bay area, just down I-4. And last but not least, holding behind enemy lines in Atlanta is Rivon Lewis. So we really appreciate everybody for chipping in with their locations and signing in for roll call today from around the country, around the state of Florida, and from around the world.
Absolutely. Fantastic turnout. Thank you to everybody, both local and international as well. The person from the Philippines watching at 4:20. That's so awesome to see. You getting up early to watch the Pewter Report podcast.
Live show too,
to watch it live. I recommend, because 4 o'clock is very early. I know it's not
really
easy
early
to stay up. Hopefully we're entertaining you enough to stay up. But if you want like a little extra help, a little extra boost, I'd recommend having a Celsius, which of course is the official energy drink of pewterreport.com and the Pewter Report podcast. They got so many awesome flavors over at Celsius, and a couple we'd recommend are the Vibe flavors, whether it's the Galaxy, Astro, Cosmic Vibe. I love the Arctic Vibe as well. It's my personal favorite. There's no sugar in Celsius energy drinks, and it's gluten-free as well. So if you want to start your morning, whether you're getting up at 4 o'clock or 7 o'clock or whenever it may be, it's a great substitute for coffee if you want something a little bit different, but to get you going. And of course, a lot of great flavors as well. If you need to know where to find a Celsius, head on over to the Celsius website, punch in your address, and it'll tell you the closest location where you can pick one up. Could be a local convenience store or Target or a health and fitness store, or it might just be your bodega.
Bodega.
And once you keep going to your bodega and you know you love Celsius and you're thinking, I want more. I'd like to buy this in bulk. Well, you can buy it in bulk. Head on over to Amazon. Click on that subscribe and save, and you can have it sent to your place of residence whenever you want. You're in charge. You're the captain. I'd recommend buying that variety pack because there's so many great flavors of Celsius, as Dragonberry was just mentioned on the screen.
Yep.
So send it over to your place of residence whenever you want. And just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com.
Yeah, Matt, this is a start to another work week for everybody now that the holiday week is over, and it's also a work week for us. We've got some work to do with podcasts. We do these Monday through Thursday live at 4 o'clock every week, with a couple of exceptions. That's going to change with training camp because we're going to follow the practices and the players' day off. We won't have podcasts. We'll recap all of the action, but tomorrow's Pewter Report podcast at 4 o'clock. We're going to do a little fantasy football, Matt. We've kind of talked about this. This should be a fun show to kind of kill some time here in the offseason as we're waiting for training camp to begin. Former Bucs who could help the Bucs in 2024. So Matt and I have picked 8 Buccaneers. The criteria being we can't just take like 2019 Shaq Barrett. These have to be older players. We can't dip back
Cannot
into
be former teammates. Cannot be former teammates.
That rules out the likes of Ali Marpet or Jason Pierre-Paul. Both those players could help at left guard and the pass rush, obviously at outside linebacker. So that's going to be the content for tomorrow's show. It's going to be a fun show. We've already kind of mapped this out. I think if you're an old school Bucs fan, or if you just like to maybe find out how some of these Bucs legends could help the present day Buccaneers, we'll do some fantasy football tomorrow and talk about that at 4 o'clock. Then Josh Capo is set to join Matt on Wednesday's show, and he is going to be talking about his Bucs sack projections for 2024. Josh did an article about this on Pewter Report, but he's going to be here in greater detail going over all of that information. And maybe even throw in some sack predictions for guys like Antoine Winfield Jr., Matt, who had 6 sacks last year. You have to include him in the pass rush category, right? Because he is so dangerous coming off the edge in that slot role. So that's going to be Wednesday's show as well. And Thursday, we're going to have another topic. We're thinking about it right now. But we've got Tuesday's show and Wednesday's show lined up, so we ask that you join us. Now back to today's show, Matt. We've talked about some of the other the best case scenarios. I mean, it doesn't get much bigger than the Super Bowl. And of course, everybody wants to see the running game improve. Switching to the defensive side, sticking on with the positives here. I just have a funny feeling that the Buccaneers are going to find the answer. And I'm not sure who that is. Could be Chris Braswell, who was featured in that last graphic. Could be Joe Tryon showing in a contract year. Could be Marquise Watts, somebody that I think could be a dark horse candidate to start by the end of the year opposite Yaya Diaby. But I just think that this year, Todd Bowles' unit finally gets over 50 sacks. They have been knocking on that door ever since he arrived in 2019. They've got 47 sacks, 48 sacks, 47, 46, 48. And they've been so close, but they have not reached 50 sacks yet. I think this is the year they do it. I want to say the Buccaneers only have one other season where they have 50 sacks. It was not the Super Bowl year, by the way. Even with Monty Kiffin and Simeon Rice and Warren Sapp in 2002, it wasn't the Super Bowl year. I'm going to have to look that up, but I think they had 55, I think is the team record. And it happened maybe in 2005. I think that was the year, 2004, 2005. I'll go back and check. But I think this is the year they do it. Todd Bowles likes to cobble sacks together. Levante, 4.5. We talked about Winfield getting 6, 5.5 from Vita Vea. They didn't have a double-digit sacker last year. Yaya Diaby led the team with 7.5, but they were just 2 sacks away from getting 50, even with a regressing Shaq Barrett, and all of this. I think we know Jordan Whitehead can also blitz. Now they got 2 safeties that can kind of come off the edge. I think this is the year where they cobble together 50, and I do think there will be a double-digit sacker in Tampa Bay. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's Kalijah Cansey.
Yes, I believe you either did it on the podcast or you have a Pewter Pulse as well about Kalijah Cansey and the boldness of what he could do this season. As far as getting to the quarterback, that will be what is most curious about the Buccaneers this season is how do they get to the quarterback? Will it be a similar blueprint of Todd Bowles' crazy schemes and blitzes and having a mishmash of who gets to the quarterback? Could be. And you know what? I actually think that's fine because the Bucs are way more equipped with blitzing firepower than they were in the previous seasons. Yes, Winfield can do exactly what he did last year, and everybody would sign up for that. But Jordan Whitehead is a way better blitzing option than anyone that the Bucs had the year before. I think with KJ Britt being a little bit slower than, say, Devin White as his peak, kind of helps the Bucs in a way where in the past, Todd Bowles, and we knew his affinity for Devin White, he likes to send Devin, but Devin would get stopped a fair amount. And if you're sending Devin, that means Levante David is staying back. Now, they would blitz both of them too at the same time, but a lot more times Devin would go and Levante would stay back in coverage because he's the better linebacker overall anyway. They needed him in coverage. Now, I know KJ Britt has his struggles, and maybe this is a situation where, Sfrase Dennis comes in on third down, which we've discussed before. But it may open up more opportunities for Levante David specifically to blitz. And Levante can still get to the quarterback, and he can disguise it and be a little more sneaky in different ways. Then, of course, there's the Todd Bowles stunts where Vita Vea is lined up at nose tackle, but then he goes to the outside. Brian Baldinger a couple of weeks ago showed great tape of Kalijah Cansey and Yaya Diaby working together where, Yaya dips to the inside and Kalijah goes to the outside, and they both end up getting to the quarterback, which leads me to my next point, and one of the best case scenarios that I had and still deals with getting to the quarterback is if the Bucs find somebody to emerge as that other outside linebacker on the opposite side of Yaya Diaby. And you kind of mentioned it a little bit before, might be Chris Braswell, might be Marquise Watts. Who knows? Maybe Anthony Nelson flips a switch this year for whatever reason, or JTS or whoever it may be. But I almost think the Bucs are better off having two, and it depends on how you view Yaya Diaby. If you think he's a true number one guy and get the job done year in and year out, yeah, that's great. I think the jury's kind of still out on that a little bit. But Yaya's already established himself as he can be a great number two option at outside linebacker. I'd rather the Bucs have two great number twos at outside linebacker that just consistently bring it than just have one guy dominating, but then a complete shadow on the other. Because let's remember, Shaq and JPP, that was a great 1-2 punch. If Chris Braswell can kind of do what Yaya did as a rookie, or, Marquise Watts with more playing time, I don't mind an improved Yaya who maybe gets to 9.5 sacks, maybe reaches that double-digit mark, or Kalijah Cansey, or someone maybe gets the bulk, but it's still kind of spread out. I think having somebody emerge and truly earn and take that job instead of Todd Bowles saying, well, you guys kind of underperformed in training camp, but you were a little bit better than everyone else, and you get the starting job. I think that can go a long way where Todd Bowles has his options. He'll blitz the crap out of you, but he can also drop his guys back. I think there's way more blitzing firepower for the Bucs, but a better opportunity to just get home with the guys on the defensive line as well.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. Matt, you mentioned Yaya Diaby, and one of the first things that comes to mind is the fact that this guy is just absolutely chiseled. He looks like a superhero. And also, too, rumor has it, he won the volleyball championship on the Bucs cruise last year. And that's an important title that you want to add to your repertoire as a young Buccaneer. And, you can join the fun too and meet these Buccaneer players on the Bucs cruise. Matt and I will be there along with the Pewter reporters next March. So make sure you set sail and sign up today for the Tampa Bay Bucs cruise.
We're on the Bucs cruise. Of course we're playing pool volleyball. Oh, no.
Hey, we on the Bucs cruise, of course. Anytime I say Tampa, they will say Bay. Tampa!
Hey! Tampa!
We're on the Bucs cruise. Of course, I've got my Super Bowl 37 hardware. What do you think?
We're on the Bucs cruise, and of course we had a pirate night. Arr!
Arr.
That's right. The Tampa Bay Buccaneer cruise going to set sail next March, right after the combine too. It's great timing with us being able to attend, and make sure you join hundreds of fans on the Bucs Tampa Bay Buccaneers cruise, and it's the third annual cruise, and it sets sail March 7th through 10th in 2025 in the beautiful Celebrity Silhouette ship. The 3-night cruise begins in Fort Lauderdale, visits Key West and Bimini, Bahamas. Last year's cruise, as I mentioned, had Yaya Diaby, Rashad White, Luke Edeke, Kate Otten, Jamel Dean, Super Bowl 37 MVP Dexter Jackson, Hall of Famer Warren Sapp, Gene Deckerhoff, and others. Jordan Whitehead has committed to the cruise this year, along with Brad Johnson, another Super Bowl champion for the Bucs, and Derek Brooks. So there'll be some new players on this one as well, and you get to meet those players, get photos with them, get their autographs. You can raise the red flags, sail away party. You can attend VIP parties with the players, special player interviews, the water volleyball challenge I mentioned, Bucs trivia contests, fun games, and more. So reserve your cabin now on the 2025 Tampa Bay Bucs cruise, where drinks, including alcohol, Wi-Fi, and tips are all included. All it takes is a $200 deposit. That's $200 per person to reserve your cabin. The ship is filling up, so don't wait. But the good news is that deposit is refundable in case you change your mind until August 16th. But make sure you visit TampaBayBucsCruise.com for more information or to sign up. That's Tampa Bay Bucs Cruise, or give them a call at 1-800-975-7112. Matt, we've talked a lot about the best case scenario for the Buccaneers, but this show, we did say we were talking about the worst case scenario too. So what are some of the worst case scenarios? Well, I've got a couple of things that kind of rumble through my head and cause a bit of a chain reaction. And I think the biggest one is something that I wrote about on Pewter Report over the weekend in my What If series, right? And I've tried to be pretty positive with that. I even had what if the Bucs win the Super Bowl in 2024? But then there's a flip side to that too, because I've got to be somewhat fair and balanced and objective in my reporting. And so I contemplated what were to happen if Baker Mayfield regressed in 2024. And I think that's something that would really send some shockwaves through this franchise, because the Bucs did sign Mayfield to a 3-year deal. I did point out in that article that Mayfield is looking for the first time in his NFL career, 2 good back-to-back seasons. He has not had that yet. The 5 years in Cleveland, never had back-to-back seasons where he had a lot of success. And then, of course, the year spent in Carolina/LA didn't work out very well. Then he comes to Tampa, had a career year, 4,044 yards, 28 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, a Pro Bowl appearance, offensive MVP at the Pro Bowl games, a playoff win. It all kind of went right for Baker. But if for some reason he gets injured or is ineffective, and if Kyle Trask is not the answer, like the Traskaholics think that he is, this franchise could be in trouble pretty quickly, because if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a playoff team, Matt.
Right. And I think what it will come down to is how and why is Baker Mayfield struggling? Because if it kind of goes back to his trajectory with Cleveland, my biggest concern is Baker's attitude overall is better for the Bucs, and it's good. But I feel like in a situation where if he gets injured, but he still wants to go and gut it out and kind of, prove his toughness, which I think we all know he's very tough at quarterback. But that's where his attitude could get in the way, where it's like, it's probably better if he sits a game or two.
Instead of playing hero ball, right?
Yeah, instead of playing hero ball. We kind of saw that a little bit last season when the Bucs kind of struggled in some games where Baker was injured. And I don't know, maybe sitting him would have been a better answer, but obviously they still stayed with him.
Yeah.
But it's how and why is Baker Mayfield struggling? Because if he is injured and he's playing through it and that's a reason why, well, you can say, all right, get him healthy next season. We saw what he did when, like the Carolina game, and they won that game, but obviously they weren't great on offense.
Yeah.
But
Not due to
if
Baker
it's-
Mayfield that game.
Yeah. Now, if it's Baker, here's the issue with all of this. If Baker regresses, is unless it's like completely horrible and he's just throwing picks all the time, and it's like a Jameis 30 for 30 season.
Yeah.
You're gonna have Baker with one good season last year. You can have
Right.
Baker with one bad season.
Yeah.
This season, hopefully, it doesn't happen. And everyone's gonna be staring at that contract and saying, Bucs can get out of it after 2 seasons. That's when all the guaranteed money is done.
Right.
Unless Baker plays egregiously terrible, I feel like the Bucs are going to say, well, we have him to this contract.
Yeah.
He had one good, he had one bad. Let's see how next year plays out.
Right.
I think what would hurt the Bucs the most is if he regresses just from a performance standpoint. The Bucs don't make the playoffs, and then they're in that weird spot of like they have like the 15th pick or something like that.
8 and 9.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they can't go out and get like a true stud or a quarterback or something like that early on. And then the Bucs are kind of saying, well, we haven't really progressed that much because he went 8 and 9 in Todd Bowles' first year with Tom Brady, and then 9 and 8, and then what are you 9 and 8 again? Are you 7 and 10? Like, what's the difference? The regression of Baker Mayfield certainly has to be in the minds of Bucs fans.
Yeah.
But if you were going to spin it positive, you would say, well, he's working with Mike and Chris again. This is way different than Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry and things of that nature. He does have experience with Liam Cohen, and he's in quarterback-friendly offenses. That's what Greg Cosell said when he was on our podcast. He said it in other places as well. Dave Canales and what he ran and what Liam Cohen is going to run with the Bucs. It's very, very quarterback-friendly, which I think helps out Baker.
I agree.
That he can't play in other offenses, but helps out
and
Baker, especially in this situation.
Yeah, we're not forecasting this. We're not saying that this is going to happen. We're not trying to speak it into existence either, but we're looking at it objectively, and that would probably be the worst case scenario. Like you said, Matt, outside of injuries, if you're just joining the show, of course, injuries are bad. Seasoning and inning injuries to Levante David, Mike Evans, Vita Vea, any of the star players would be bad, but that's off the table. That's kind of a given. If those things happen, if the Buccaneers get a crazy amount of injuries, then the season is going to be lost. That's with any team in the league. But I think the other thing too is if this running game doesn't materialize, if for some reason Liam Cohen's offense and his play calling just don't mesh with the talent, we think that it will. I think he's going to be better than Dave Canales. He's got 2 years worth of play calling experience at Kentucky. That does account for something. It's not like you're playing high school ball. This is the SEC. And they did have some pretty good wins there with Liam Cohen at the helm of the play calling duties. And then he's got a handful of games where he called plays when Sean McVay turned over the play calling duties to him. And he's from that Sean McVay tree too. So I think that he is more poised to hit the ground running as a play caller. I do think that he and Baker will mesh. But again, worst case scenario, if this offense doesn't take, it might not be a situation where Todd Bowles gets to choose another offensive coordinator. And what I mean by that is even the great Tony Dungy in his final 3 seasons as the Bucs head coach went through 3 different offensive coordinators, and then he got fired, He went from having Mike Shula to Les Steckel and then to Clyde Christensen in his final season, which was 2001. And then he got fired because they couldn't beat the Eagles. So to me, you look at this now, and Todd Bowles has had Byron Leftwich. He's had Dave Canales, and now he has Liam Cohen. And if it doesn't work this year, if the Bucs take a step back, Todd Bowles, 17-17 right now as the head coach. He's 1-2 in the playoffs. I think that he needs to win and get in the playoffs to continue on as Tampa Bay's head coach. It could be a situation where if the Falcons really leapfrog the Buccaneers and they get, say, 11 wins and Tampa Bay stuck at 8, and there appears to be a pretty big gap there, then maybe Bowles gets lost in the wash and gets fired as well. And then, Matt, you've got this defense that Bowles has assembled, with players that he's had a hand in drafting, Now, who will be the defensive coordinator under the new head coach, right? So it opens up a whole can of worms. And for a team that is poised to make another Super Bowl run, and I believe the Super Bowl window for the Buccaneers opens in 2025. I think that's a more realistic time frame because they'll have salary cap room to be able to spend in free agency. They're not going to have a whole bunch of big-time free agents to have to spend on like they did this past year. Chris Godwin's probably the biggest name. So to me, if the Buccaneers win, I think they set themselves up with a really good trajectory. But boy, if they don't make the playoffs, if they have a losing record, if there is a regime change with the coaching staff, if Baker Mayfield regresses, I think the whole thing kind of unravels. And I'm not saying you go into rebuild mode, but you've got to reload to get back to where you were. And I think that really sets this franchise back, especially if a team like Atlanta gets catapulted forward.
Because that's a big factor in all of this, Scott, is that I don't even know if that they can rebuild because they just, and granted, like Levante David's on a 1-year deal, so that's fine. But like they just signed Baker. They just signed Mike Evans. And I know Mike's contract isn't crazy long.
And Winfield.
They just gave Winfield an extension. Odds are the worst extension is coming soon. So you're going to have a lot of core players that the Bucs can't just get rid of to, build over once again. Now, the Falcons, if they have a major increase in wins and obviously style of play with Kirk Cousins there, that's going to sound the alarm for the Bucs because you can't kind of wait around and bide your time and hope that Todd Bowles figures it out. Because what if they go 9-8 again this year, but they make the playoffs? Like, you kind of pulling your hair because it's like it's not bad enough to say let's move on, but it's not good enough to say
it's
this
Jeff
is
Fisher land, right?
It's Jeff Fisher land. Now, if they were to get rid of Todd Bowles, I think you got to go offense. But then it's like, all right, new offense again. Baker Mayfield's doing this all over again with his career. But it is easier to say let's go with an offensive guy because there's going to be a lot of defensive coordinators that would be chomping at the bit to work with that Buccaneers defense.
That's true.
And they hopefully they would find a 3-4 guy that you're changing the defense, but not an insane amount. But I mean, what coach wouldn't want to coach Antoine Winfield Jr. and have Levante David if Levante keeps on playing and things of that nature? So there is a lot of moving parts. Bowles obviously is responsible for a lot of it, not all of it, but the changing of the guard, as we've seen. It takes time, whether it's Bruce Arians, whether it's Todd Bowles or Dave Canales, that coordinator, and we'll see what happens with Liam Cohen. But these things take time, and I don't know how much time the Bucs can afford to take at this moment.
Yeah, I think the other thing too, just to kind of the last point I'll make about the worst case scenario, because we talked about the running game, getting better. That's in the better case scenario there. I think when you look at the Buccaneers. If that other outside linebacker doesn't emerge, right? If you've got a couple guys that are 3 and 4 sack guys, maybe like a 5 sack guy, Anthony Nelson, right? If this team just has a collection of mediocre pass rushers opposite Yaya Diaby, I think that would be kind of worst case scenario. It's like they've got a lot of guys that would be really good, like number 3 or 4 guys on the depth chart, but not the ideal number 2 or number 1. That would be disappointing. And then the other thing too is the cornerback situation, right? Is in the safeties. I don't think there's any dispute that Winfield and Whitehead are amazing safeties. But if Zion McCollum doesn't live up to the hype, if Jamel Dean just doesn't take that next step, if they combine for 0 interceptions again, right? If Bryce Hall is not a good enough cornerback to step in case there's an injury. The cornerback position could quickly unravel. It could be a surprise team strength, or I think it could be the weak link of the secondary.
Yeah, I think it's really teetering in the balance right now. A lot of this relies on Zion McCollum, who, if I were going to say whether he's going to have a better season or take a step back, I think he's going to have an even better season this year. Yeah. But if it doesn't work out, you're looking at a situation where in 2025, the Bucs have completely all new corners because, well, except for Zion McCollum because he's still on his rookie deal. But Jamel Dean could be out of there based on everything that you were saying about injuries and obviously not getting interceptions. And Hall is on a 1-year deal, and Tavier Thomas is on a 1-year deal. It could be a completely revamped cornerback room. Now, on the flip side, if McCollum figures it out, you may have your cornerback one, and then, you fill in the other pieces. There's a lot of questions about the corner if the play doesn't reach to the level that we kind of expect of it.
Yeah.
We have a super chat from Meets McGee. Thank you, Meets McGee, for this $2 super chat. It says, I'm more concerned with Todd Bowles than Baker Mayfield. I think that's a reasonable concern / reply, because we've been critical of Todd Bowles and some of the things that he's done. Where Baker, it seems like more of a quick fix with what he can do versus there's a lot more that can be fixed with Baker Mayfield than what Bowles has kind of got going on.
Well, the other thing, too, is that I think you look at Todd Bowles, can he beat the Lions? Can he beat the 49ers? Those are the two teams that I think he has to beat. For Tony Dungy couldn't beat the Eagles, right? That was ultimately his undoing. They got in the playoffs. They went to Philly. They lost twice. And John Gruden proved to be the guy that could beat the Eagles. So I think that's the key thing for Todd Bowles is, listen, the 49ers and the Lions, they're the class of the NFC. At least they were last year. They were both in the NFC Championship game. The 49ers advanced. I think right now those two teams you can't count them out for being in that spot again. So Tampa Bay has got a shot against the Lions in a rematch revenge game in week 2 at Detroit. And then I want to say week 10 at when the 49ers coming to Tampa Bay after playing at San Francisco twice. So, there's a lot to go over there. The Buccaneers, it's disappointing because I really wanted to go to Colorado to see the Bucs play the Broncos, but as it turns out, the Broncos are coming here to Tampa. So maybe I just got to save up with the Muni Financial. Maybe I can get to Colorado.
At Muni Financial, we help you live in the now.
Dude, congratulations. We're so happy for you.
Thank you. And even though the now may feel very different, you still need to plan for the future.
How's retirement treating you?
Oh, just fantastic.
I know I say it all the time, but you really got to come up to Colorado.
Let's do it.
All right.
Yeah.
We can help you develop that plan to keep you on track so you can still prepare for tomorrow, today. Muni Financial. Plan ahead, stay ahead.
It's all about your financial future with Muni Financial, and they're going to help you manage more than just your wealth. They're going to help you do some legacy planning, brokerage and advisory services, retirement accounts, college savings accounts, insurance services. They've got it all, plus the experience that you need to get the best financial help possible. With Muni Financial, they're going to help you plan ahead so you can stay ahead. Give them a call at 1-800-868-6864 or visit them on the web at immuni.com. Again, tomorrow's show is going to be a good one. We're not talking about present day Buccaneers in terms of like Mike Allstott's 50, I think, because I'm 52. But how about the A-Train in his prime? Yeah, we're talking about 8 former Bucs who could help this year's Tampa Bay team in 2024 if those players were in their prime. So don't miss that show tomorrow. And then we got a great show on Wednesday. Josh Capo is expected to join Matt to talk about his Bucs sack projections for 2024. That is Chris Braswell. How many sacks did Josh forecast for Chris Braswell? Find out on Wednesday.
Yeah, so we got a lot of great stuff coming up. And in the meantime, you could follow us on all of our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram at Pewter Report. Our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV, where you can find all of our content, including Pewter Report podcast 4 times a week. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment on this video as well. Like I said, if you missed Roll Call Live, feel free to put it in the comments, and we will hit that like button and then hit the Pewter Report like button. So that's going to do it for us.
Those comments and likes, they help out big time. We see that with our YouTube algorithm reports. It makes a big difference. So please keep doing it.
Yes, please do. All right. So that's going to do for us on today's show. For Scott Reynolds, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching. And we'll see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.